Alright class, today we're talking about law of cosines. So pause the screen real quick to write this stuff down. Okay, hopefully you did that. Alright, so we basically use law of cosines when you can't use the law of sines. So remember, we use the law of sines when we have like side A and angle A. We have a matching pair of letters. So in this case, we wouldn't have that. So we have to use this law instead. The one I gave you in the print is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine c. This is used if you want to either find little c or big C. Now if you need to find little a or big A, then you use the other one down here, which is a squared. Or if you want to find little b or big B, you switch it around just so you set it up to be b squared. So based on what you're finding, you actually switch the letters around, but it's the same formula over again. So let's look at this problem right here. I have a triangle ABC, where A is 120, B is 9, C is 5. So if I look at my chart, which I probably should have pre-drawn, I have angle A is 120, side B is 9, and side C is 5. So if you look at the chart, we don't have a matching pair of side and angle. So this tells us we have to use law of cosine. If we have an angle, that's what we want to find. So we're going to find little a first. So I'm going to use this setup that's up here and say I want to find a squared equals b squared, which is 9 squared, plus 5 squared, minus 2 times 9 times 5, cosine of 120. Now when it's finding a side and you have all that information, you can literally type all of this in, make sure you're in degree mode. When you type all of that in, I believe you get 151, because I did this like 3 times yesterday. And then you take the square root of 151, and you get A is equal to 12.29. Okay. Now we need to find an angle. And you can find either angle B or C. I'll find angle B. So for angle B, we're going to use the setup where it's B squared, so 9 squared, equals A squared plus C squared minus 2 times that number A and C cosine of big B. So now we don't know what that is. So what you want to do is be careful with your order of operations here. You want to make sure that you keep this separate from that number. So if I do 12.29 squared plus 25, which is 5 squared, this number becomes 176.0441. The other number becomes 122.9 cosine of B. And of course 9 squared is 81. So if you look at this setup right here, we want to solve for cosine of B. One of the major errors that people do is they combine the 176 and the 122.9. You can't do that. You have to move over the 176 first. So you subtract the 176 to both sides. So 81 minus the 176 is negative 95.0441. Negative 122.9 cosine of B. You make it a fraction, so we get cosine of B equals 95.0441 divided by 122.9. If you notice, I just took out the negative sign because they both had negative signs, so why not just cancel them? And then remember, to find an angle, you have to inverse cosine. So it basically becomes cosine inverse of this equals B. And then when you do that, you get angle B is equal to 39.34 degrees. So we found angle B, we found side A. Now we can find angle C using our property of triangles that states that all angles in a triangle add up to 180. So it's 180 minus 120, which is 60, minus the 39.34, and we get that angle C is equal to 20.66. Okay? So that's how you use law of cosines. Let's do one more problem. a different type of setup, and then we'll call it a day. So on this one, I'm not even going to use a chart, because if you look at this triangle, x, y, z, x is 8, y is 14, and z is 19. We have only sides, so there's definitely no matching pair of a side and an angle. If you have 3 sides, you have to use law of cosines. You get to pick what you want to do. We're going to actually have to do this twice. So we have to find 2 angles. I'm just going to put a line here, because we're going to do 2 problems. I'll find angle x on this side and angle z on this side. So if I'm setting up for angle x, that means that I have to put side x first. So side x squared equals the other 2, y and z squared, minus 2 times those numbers, cosine of x. Over here, if I want z, z is the thing on the outside equal sign. The other 2 numbers are there. 8 squared plus 14 squared, minus 2 times those 2 numbers, cosine of z. Okay, now I just have to get a bunch of these numbers out. So we know that this is 64, 196 plus whatever 19 squared is, which, well, it's 361. So we get 557 plus, actually that's not right, it's minus 2 times 19 times 14. Now while I'm doing this, and you guys are writing, I did want to talk about one other thing from the last problem. Well, not really, it's just in general. You might be wondering, hey, if I get one of the angles and I have a matching pair of side and angle, can I now use law of sines to make my life easier for the last 2 angles? It depends on the situation, which is why we're not going to do it, because if you don't use it in the correct situation, it's not going to be good. 19 squared is 361. 8 squared plus 14 squared is 260. And the reason why that is law of sines only gives you acute angles. So if you accidentally use law of sines on an obtuse angle, you don't get the right answer. So that's why we will stick with law of cosines once we start with law of cosines. It'll be safer for you guys. Alright, now we move over. So 64 minus 557. You get a negative 493 on this side. 361 minus 260 is 101. I should have just known that. This is negative 532 cosine of x. This is equal to negative 224 cosine of z. Alright, the next thing we do is divide. So we get cosine of x is equal to the fraction 493 over 532. And we have cosine of z equals negative 101 over 224, because that one actually has no negative over there, so they don't cancel. And I don't know why I wrote 100 there. It should be 101. Okay, so now we just inverse cosine. So do that for both of those, and you'll get both your angles. Okay, so the first one, x, angle x is 22.08 degrees. And then when you do z, you get 116.80 degrees. And that makes sense because z is across from the 19, so it should be the biggest angle. X is across from the 8, should be the smallest. And then to find angle y, you just do your 180 minus your 2 answers, just like before. Okay. And then when you do that, you have your answer. And then the answer for angle y is 41.12, which also makes sense because that is between the other 2 angles. And so y is the middle side. So that's the law of cosines. You will be given that, I believe, on your test. Just one of them. I think the C one that's printed at the top. So you'll need to know how to set it up for things that it's not C. And then go from there. And that's it for today. I will see you guys later.